Welcome everybody. Today we're going to make this ShopVac cart that just happens to make things a little bit quieter. Ladies and gentlemen, today's project is one I've been wanting to build for a while now. As with a lot of my shop projects, I typically don't go out and buy a bunch of nice cabinet grade plywood. Although I would like to, I usually just go through all the pieces I have laying around from past projects and stuff stacked around the shop and whatever else I can find. And I do what I can piece those together, and I think I'm actually getting pretty good at it. So as you can tell from the thumbnail and or the title, we're building a cabinet for my ShopVac today. My ShopVac, like all other ShopVacs, I'm sure is loud enough that it can deafen people within about a 3-mile range. I know mine can. The base cabinet, just a simple box held together with some glue, a couple nails, and some pocket holes. Throw some casters on the bottom, and then I am ready to start toning this thing down just a bit, hopefully. Put a little hardwood edge banding on the door just to keep the edges a little bit tougher and make it last a bit longer over time. So I take my bucket, the simple instructions from the dust deputy, and we are ready to move on with the next phase of the sound deadening. And that is, this air has got to exhaust out of this cabinet, but hopefully we're going to quiet it down just a little bit before it does. So after getting these baffles put in here, I'm going to line this with foam to try to dissipate the air and help with the noise a little bit. I had this old piece of foam from some packaging material. I'm just cut it into strips, and I'm basically going to line this in here with some spray adhesive, kind of stick that to where all the panels that the air hits, and hopefully that'll help some more with the sound. Now that we have a way to exhaust the air, we have to have a way for the ShopVac to have its input, of course, to be able to suck into the cabinet. So we're putting this simple PVC pipe in there, sealing it up so there's a transfer between the ShopVac and the outside dust deputy. We're using some simple egg crate foam. It's just old mattress toppers that I cut up to line up inside of this cabinet as much as I can. Basically just some spray adhesive and stick it on there as best that I can, and then some other scrap pieces of foam on the bottom that you've seen there to try to isolate the vibrations at the bottom of the ShopVac to the cabinet. I'm not sure if that made a big difference, but I wanted to seal it up as much as I could. Even though these could be cut lots of ways, I have access to a laser, so I used it to cut these panels out as kind of a support for the bucket to keep it from tipping over from pressure on the hose pulling on the top of the dust deputy. I cut 2 of them out, one of them here at the bottom, so the bucket fits kind of snugly into it and it doesn't move around. And then I cut a second one that basically I'm going to put spacers in between to hold the bucket in the same position, but just gives it kind of a double reinforcement because that plywood is fairly thin. I wanted it to be pretty rigid in there so I don't have to be careful in tugging this thing around. I want to be able to just grab a hold of it and pull it wherever I need it to go. Next up was wiring the electric. I wanted to make this to where it's kind of a multi-purpose. I could use it almost as like a power strip that I could move around the shop, and also of course I needed to power the ShopVac. So I wired this box to where the 2 outlets on one side of the box were basically hot all the time when the ShopVac cart was plugged in, and then the side with the switch, that outlet is powered of course through the switch. So then I ran the power from the box down into the cabinet that I wired just a simple outlet in there that the ShopVac could plug into. So anytime that switch flipped on the ShopVac. When I started building the top, I really had no idea what I wanted it to look like. I couldn't decide. So I just started grabbing some scraps, throwing them together. I knew I wanted it to be as lightweight as I could, but still strong. So I grabbed what plywood scraps I had, kind of threw them together here in a skeleton of a frame that I'm gonna put on top. I had to cut a few notches as far as where the hose was going to lay and how it was going to come across there. I kind of smoothed off some of the corners. I did that just on the bandsaw. It could be done with the jigsaw or whatever. Although it looks a bit odd, the top here is, from a utility standpoint, actually has turned out pretty good. Grabbing a hold of it, moving it around, and everything that I needed from a support standpoint for all the hoses, it's working really great. A couple of last little details I needed was this hose coupler so I could take the hose in and out when I needed to and add different kinds of hoses on the front of this if I needed to. And then I cut a couple little more pieces on the lasers so that it would support the coupler, because just gluing it I didn't think would be good enough. Then I just made a quick little plywood hook on there to hold the extra hose. My last finishing steps was just to apply the graphics, and I'll put a card in the top of the video so you can click on my video of how to apply vinyl graphics to wood, because I go into a lot more detail. And after a couple of more finishing touches, this thing was ready to go. And time. We're done, finally. So this thing has been really great in the shop. I've used it for a few days. Dragging it around isn't too bad. The casters make it super easy to pull. It's not heavy. It's sturdy enough to grab by any part of it to pull it around. Makes it really handy. I had this rubber coupler that was in the top. Also is good. You pull the hose out from either end to where you want to pull this out to put a different hose in there. Pull the bigger hose out of the back to uncoil it, to use it with other ShopVac connections to sweep the floor or sweep off a tool or something. So that makes it handy. The bucket is easy to remove. The switch is nice because it has multiple outlets that are powered. These two are powered all the time. This one's powered by the switch, so you can plug in a random orbital sander or something. So overall, I really like it. It's a pretty easy project to make, and I'm sure now the last thing to show you is the sound difference, because it did make a substantial sound difference. So that's obviously originally what I built this for, is to make that thing a little quieter so it doesn't wake the dead when you turn it on. So let's set that up real quick. So I'll try to show this the best way that I can, not be scientific in any way. I don't have a decibel meter or anything like that. I'm just gonna try to show you with the door open and with the door closed, and hopefully it'll come across on camera good enough to be able to see that this did make a substantial difference in the sound. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next video.